any of those, what they're related to, but now I do.
Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up.
Hello, Ben.
Hello, Jeremy. Happy Friday.
Yes, happy Friday to you. And welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up, where we look at everything to do with the London market, technology change, innovation. This week, we're going to have a quick look at ESG. But as always, let's start with the news, Ben. So stuff that hit the headlines this week, which I saw, well, actually, it was all over the BBC. I think it was yesterday, about, or maybe Wednesday, Lloyd's of London deeply sorry over slavery links. And I think they were putting out a statement kind of recognising and apologising for the role that they played in that area. And it needed to be done, really, didn't it? Because well, as you can see there were protesters out there, and it's just I think other organisations are recognising kind of their role, and Lloyd's needed to do the same, I suppose.
Yeah. I really want to say lavery links just because of that phrase there, but anyway, so that's obviously an aside. But anyway, yeah, it's it has been discussed for quite a long time, and this is the outcome. And they are donating, was it 15 million or 50 million? Can't remember, but you can talk about that. But it is,
yeah.
I think the detail of it, as you might come on to, has come under some criticism. I think it's part of what really we're talking about generally today, which is what are the responsibilities, the societal and historic responsibilities of organisations in all sorts of different areas, and this is another of those, really. So it has been, they put these statements out and what they're going to do, and then they're going to just have to see as to whether that really, kind of washes with whoever the people are who it needs to wash with.
Yeah, and there's it didn't get universal kind of plaudits. A couple of people here call it a bit of a PR exercise and quite frankly offensive. And saying that they really should be doing more to reparations. Apologies, I can't speak today, but I've got a cold and a sore knee. I'm just here feeling sorry for myself generally. But some comments there, just kind of, I suppose, putting the other side of the argument. Yeah, is it a PR exercise? Is it something that just everyone's jumping on? It's difficult, isn't it? It's really tricky stuff.
Well, it's tricky, and we're going to come on to some stuff about gender, and you have to deliver on these things. The question is to what extent. Two things, really. One is the direct payments that you make, or reparations to the families of. That is I've heard various shows about this and programs on it and read about it, and I think there are some very legitimate issues there that need to be sorted, and I think it's down to the detail of how this was managed. And I think some of it is, when you read it, it is quite shocking, some of the things that went on. There were claims related to slaves and people and so on and so forth. So the past was not good, but then in the end of the day, how much can you how much do you pay, how do you measure it, how do you deal with it? I do sense that perhaps this is easily seen as lip service because it's just an internal cost, to commit to diversity in the market. Let's see how they're doing on that in a while. If it was linked to some kind of metrics, I think, which Lloyd's does sort of do, but if it was showing to be making progress, maybe it would be good. But as it's pointed out here, there's a diversity gap, ethnic minority gap in the market. So in a funny way, you've drawn attention to a lot of other issues here, which are not the issue related to slavery. So it's history repeating itself and coming back in a way. Difficult. Yeah, but I mean, actually, but the responsibility of Lloyd's. It's a very large. It's embedded in the legal framework of this country, so it has certainly duty and responsibilities without question.
Definitely. And let's, as you say, kind of build on that with the next kind of piece that we're going to talk about, which is around gender, isn't it? So I think you found this article in the FT, the BlackRock study, and yeah, we can expand it out into the insurance London market, can't we?
So this is kind of important, I think, in a way, because what has been argued about for quite a while is whether having more gender balanced companies is good for business. And there was a very famous McKinsey study done about probably 8, 9 years ago now, which lots of businesses have focused on. I think we've mentioned it on the show before. And that really said that, yes, there is commercial benefit to having more gender diverse businesses or gender balanced businesses. And this has been fought over quite a bit because that was questioned. Some of the methodology was questioned. And what BlackRock has done is a very large study. So 1,250 companies have been reviewed. So this is the largest ever study. They've controlled for the correlations that they found. In other words, they've taken certain factors and weighted them up or down to be able to make sure that they are not overplaying certain factors when they do this analysis. And what they found is that, as you can see here from some of the stats, is that essentially the companies that have better representation of women do perform better, measured by return on assets by about 2%, which is quite a lot for very large companies and across the whole sector. And it does seem that this is now the evidence that will potentially be used to convince investors that there is a need to measure and consider gender when they're investing in companies. Now, that may or may not happen. I mean, I just think it is a very big study. BlackRock is a hugely influential organization in the investing world. I know it's very keen on what some people might call kind of woke ESG type soft stuff in its investor, kind of strategy. But equally, this sort of thing is showing, if it's right, it's showing difference that matters in the kind of pockets, if you like, of the commercial investors. So it's important, yeah, and it kind of backs up more concrete arguments for this, as opposed to, is it just a good thing?
Yeah, and we've talked about kind of this in the context of the London market. I mean, you do a lot of work in terms of putting the data around this, especially in underwriting and claims, and seeing the diversity in that. And then we both saw the article in the Insider, which kind of draws attention to this, that actually very little has changed over the years, I suppose.
So this was a big investigation that the Insider did last year, obviously about this time, and I think Catherine Shee led this out, the editor at Insider, and has revisited this piece of research that they did, and this, I mean, the basic conclusion is that nothing much has changed in a year, and in fact, even with more evidence and more data, which is what they've done in this, they've collected a lot more data. They're finding that, they would have expected by going a bit wider that they would have found more diversity, or more gender balance, but they found that hasn't changed it. So so it's a more kind of depressing, I suppose, negative piece this year than even it was last year. And last year was a sort of the Insider kind of drawing a line in the sand on this, saying this has to improve. Okay, so that's kind of where they come from. So what are they saying? Well, they're saying that only of the 99 active underwriters, only 9 are female in the market, and only 21 senior exec positions were held by women in 2023 versus 18 in 2022. So this is this is tiny movements at senior levels. And one of the things about this is you just mentioned that we do data, that it's more the kind of, middle, the other levels of management in underwriting and claims, and we don't see much movement at all. We're seeing very similar numbers there, 2%, 1% here, stuff that doesn't fill you with hope in the sense of it moving a number big time. And I think they're saying the same thing here from their stats. At board level, only 25% female, which is again a very slight improvement. And I would say that I think the issue is that in some ways it's often easier to change at board level because you've got fewer people, you've got kind of more control over that, and you haven't got these longer term issues of having to shift a whole recruitment strategy and wait for people to get into role. Board level, you can do things, but they're not tending to happen. And one of the reasons that they talk about here is, and they talked about it last time, is Lloyd's Market's obsession, as they call it, with senior people having to have underwriting backgrounds. And they indicate, or they hypothesize, that this is worse. This militates against women in senior roles because most of them tend to have come through into senior positions through finance, legal, claims or compliance, and not underwriting. Now that may be both cultural or just because, as they say here, the more structured professions, have given more possibilities to women in terms of career progression, as opposed to underwriting, which isn't arguably all that structured. And arguably culturally might be quite male dominated. It is certainly male dominated numbers terms, but culturally it may be too. So all of that coming into play kind of makes it, feel like nothing much is going to change going forward. And the only conclusion really that they come out with here is in the insider is to say Lloyd's has talked about penalties for businesses that are dragging their feet on this, and Lloyd's now, they say, should do more on that and be more proactive about those penalties, which, of course, that's fine, but it's a very stark, bleak conclusion in a way if you have to kind of use a stick to make this work. It stands in contrast to the BlackRock stuff, which says it's a pretty good thing generally for business anyway, even on a very kind of tight number around return on assets. I happen to think there are all sorts of other benefits, not least of which, if you're only focusing on, it's 80-20 from all the figures we can see of women in the market. If you're only focusing on that, you've excluded a huge amount of talent. And groups like LNG and others are trying to get more talent into the market. And of course, if young women don't see women in jobs, we know, common sense tells you don't need numbers or stats to tell us that that's not a good thing over time. So the market is not even really at a basic level opening up to more talent. It's closed itself down all the time on this. So yeah, it's a bit bad, a bit depressing. Yeah.
Well, we said for the London Market Claims event that we both did a month ago, like how refreshing it was to see kind of that diverse range of thought and ethnicity and women in the audience as well, which is good. So maybe let's look at the positive side of this, that actually the wheels are starting to turn, and in time you will see the dial starting to move at that senior level, because it needs to start at the grassroots and go up.
I agree. I think though culturally, the point that they pick up around underwriting and the obsession with underwriting backgrounds is a bigger issue, is bigger even than they say here, because I do agree with that. I think there is a sort of, underwriters have been kind of mythical, iconic figures in the past, let's be honest, lots and lots of underwriters are good at jobs and do a great job, and they're still needed, and that's a bigger discussion we'll have another time. But let's also be honest and say that the world has changed, and underwriters are part of much bigger businesses now. they're one part of the business, and often they are intrinsically or inextricably linked with the actuarial, the modelling, the financial aggregate and all that they have to play to. So this is not any more about a bunch of amazing entrepreneurial individuals. I mean, some of them are entrepreneurial, but they're really part of large corporate organizations. They fulfill their roles. So I think we've kind of got to look probably at the culture of underwriting much more and say that needs to shift a bit. And because if it doesn't, you can see you'll just have this kind of male bastion in the middle of the market, whereas the rest of it will be, more ethnically diverse, more gender diverse, and you'll have a real kind of clash there ultimately. And I think that's not very healthy.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, good. Right. Thanks for that, Ben. Let's do wars. Let's do ESG. Yeah. So woke wars. So I think there were some articles, and we've been talking a bit about ESG, haven't we? On the show, and our angle so far has kind of been, how's the industry going to kind of almost pivot and be able to operate and be relevant as these new kind of risks come along. But actually, you picked up on a kind of wider debate that's going on. I think it's the ESG articles.
Yeah, so we're going to look at this, but one of the things that we're starting to do work on ESG and we've got some experts who in our businesses that look at it. But the start point for nearly all of the conversations I've noticed is, so where is ESG going to go? Is it going to be a thing or is it not going to be a thing? So there is this kind of Marmite or polarized battle over this, and you can take your pick. So there's a whole bunch of articles here in the FT, sort of, anti-ESG investing. ESG is okay. ESG is beyond redemption. May it RIP. That's quite a good article, by the way. But this is the thing. So each of these articles tells you just how it moves from this polarized, almost kind of, believers versus non-believers argument in the marketplace. And this is also caught up with the supposed backlash in the US against it. And now we've got political issues, in the UK with Sunak talking about seen to be backtracking on climate change commitments. So you've got a huge, again, this is our societal program today, isn't it? But this is a huge societal argument. You'd say that, and you'd definitely say that insurers have got to be both opportunity-wise and responsibility-wise in the debate about the environment and climate. Because insurance will benefit from that as those programs come on in the future, but it will also has a heavy responsibility for the transition. But so it is very, very important to the sector we talk about, but it is just so difficult to sort of get to see what the wood for the trees is until I've got a nice article that gives a bit of a clue. And of course, well, go on, you can say something about it if you want to.
I was just going to say ESG and the woke wars, they're live at Glastonbury on the pyramid stage.
Yeah.
Lining.
Good. That's a good one. So so this starts, of course, within the woke wars, there are no winners. And it is a woke war in lots of ways, and more so perhaps in the US than here. And what this article does is it goes through really the number of proposals that have gone to shareholders at AGMs, if they're still called that, around ESG. So do we have an ESG policy? And so this goes, each of these points made in this article was on the one hand, this is good, and the other hand, not so good. And this is the first one, which is that there've been a huge number of proposals, and they've increased ESG proposals going in, but only 4 of them have been passed in the last year. So very tiny numbers are going through, and this is a wholesale. We're committed to an ESG program for a big Fortune 500 company, Fortune 250, I think these are.
Yeah.
And then they said, well, okay, but most of these things tend to be, when you get to more, specialized ESG, they're around the important things of climate and the environment, and those go. But actually, when you look at that, it's even worse. None of those, although the proposals are going up, none of those passed in 2023. So, and the actual interest in terms of the number of proposals has dropped quite significantly. So that sounds all very bad, and well, bad if you support it, and great if you are anti-ESG. But actually, they say that the Barclays Bank, I think, have done some analysis and said this isn't all to do with ESG. Some of it is to do with other factors, and that includes there have apparently been lower thresholds for this that have been set, which means that companies can't kind of opt out as easily, saying that they can't get to that bar. And so that's why you get the volume increasing of proposals, but actually they're not necessarily that committed to doing them. They're just doing them because they have to.
Yeah.
There is also, because of the way that the regulation has gone, surprise, surprise, there's a massive increase in the paperwork related to these and the bureaucracy, and companies are reluctant to take that on. In the investment world generally, you probably know there's much more of a move away from active investment towards passive investment. And in those passive investment funds, they're not that interested in ESG because it's just, you just follow a tracker fund or whatever. And then the final point, which is interesting, which we've kind of touched on already, is companies are already sort of doing these things anyway. And they cite, which I won't go through here, a lot of examples of companies that are doing stuff. So change, they argue, or is argued through this article, is happening, but not in the way that it's kind of set up to happen by, regulators and shareholders and investors. Companies are kind of just doing things anyway. And then the final point is really around anti-ESG, which is supposed to be a massive backlash. And there's some people very high profile on this, and there's funds that are anti-ESG funds. Well, that seems like from the stats they've got here that those are fading too. So anti-ESG proposals are still just a tiny, tiny proportion of the total of pro-ESG proposals. Anyway, so gather that all together, and it kind of says that nobody's winning in the way it's being set up to work, and the processes and the channels and how you do it all, they don't really work. But perhaps behind the scenes, it's just happening anyway, and companies are starting to pick things that work for them and make sense. Now, whether that moves the dial on climate or environment or societal change, I don't know. But it's kind of interesting.
I think that's two things to say about that. And coming back to your point about the BlackRock survey, if you had some, wide survey that said, if you do this in this space, then you're more likely to increase shareholder value or win more clients or whatever else, I think that would be helpful. But actually, in the end, to your last point, I think companies will do it, what they need to do in the commercial reality then they find themselves in, and they will it will be driven by what their customers and and eventually their shareholders want. Right?
Yeah, I mean, you're completely right. I mean, companies are led by people. I think companies are probably saying, look, we don't want to get embroiled in major sort of transformation programs with lots of bureaucracy when we don't know what we're getting into, and investors aren't that bothered anyway. They don't have the proof, as you just described it. But there are areas, and I think this was something we did a couple of weeks ago, there are areas where companies just say, well, it's common sense, I mean, I think outside of the Lloyd's market, for example, gender balance is much better, and the diversity is much better. It's just, the bubble of London is not great, pretty bad actually. So lots of these things are changing, but they're more about the way that the companies are perhaps even reacting to their own staffing and talent and leadership. So they're changes that are happening through what are seemingly superficial discussions or discourse, but actually they do make a big difference. So the big, like, yeah, you've got to get on board with the regulation, you've got to have all these measures that are provided for by these companies, seem to be seen as suspicious sort of potential just money grabbing schemes, Ponzi type grabbing schemes to make you pay for data to show your greenwashing, as it's called.
Yeah.
Whereas actually maybe companies are just being more authentic because people are changing. Their views are changing. They're more open to the idea, and they do actually fundamentally perhaps believe that we should do something about the environment and so on. So, that's my, sermon from the Mount optimistic view of the world. Of course, they might all just be money grabbing, fossil fuel loving people who don't care about the future or their children or anything else. But no, I'm not sure that I feel that when I speak to people. They don't seem to be like that in insurance anyway.
Yeah. I think we're at an interesting time, aren't we? Just societally, as we've already said, politics, you can look at that as well. And, you feel like you hope it's going to come down on the right side and we're going to start to head in a direction a bit more rapidly that we'll start to tackle some of this stuff in a positive way. And I agree with you that I think these leaders of organizations do feel a moral responsibility to do more than just increase shareholder value, because I think ultimately they will see that customers, consumers, clients, whatever, are moving in that direction, and they want to be ready to meet their expectations and make money from it. So
yeah, I agree. And I think one of the areas of backlash is against this virtue signaling type stuff for companies, and that has been very evident, I think. Whereas I was just thinking of the example of, in this country, Timpson's, the shoe repairer and key cutter and all that stuff that they do, but they very interesting. They've recruited ex-convicts, prisoners, and done it properly and authentically, and had a very, very successful business as a result of that. So I think you could argue and the hope is that this is a move more towards authenticity and things that matter, and a move away from that virtue signaling or tick box type of things that you get through regulation. So yeah, everybody, we need to we'll keep looking at it. I think everybody needs to kind of get through this and say, well, what is actually going to work and what isn't? And actually, in the end, with regulation, if companies say, well, we're not going to do this, the regulation isn't going to work anyway. It can be rejected.
Yeah. Good. Right. Thanks for that, Ben. I'm going to go to, remember last week, I brought up the story of what is kind of the number of products in the marketplace, and kind of which products have gone up and which products have gone down, mainly in the retail space. And obviously we noted the travel had gone up, obviously, but then there were a number of things like add-ons that had come down. So that was just in the retail space. And then this week I saw actually I didn't see it on the Mail Online. This is what I kind of searched up. But anyway, here we are. Martin Lewis, the money expert guy who sold his business and then is kind of this supposed guru for saving you money.
Or know it all.
Or know it all. Or money grabber. I don't know, whatever. You take your pick.
Look at it,
yeah. He takes your pick. He was on TV on Tuesday having a pop at insurance, which he quite often does. And I think I've said on this show that I watched one, I was quite surprised by what he was saying on there. And it was all about price. How do you get the price down? Price. Nothing about the value of the product, nothing about claims, nothing about how it might help. Anyway, that's his stick, right? And he says on it a number of quite outrageous things, basically saying that you can manipulate your quote by, if you go to a comparison site, putting in different attributes until you get the figure down. And one of the things he says, you can legitimately tweak your job title, since different occupations have different varying risks. Well, there's a reason for that. It's because they've built an algorithm that says that if you drive a lot because you're a painter and decorator or a plumber, then you need to let them know and not just put down you're a company director. So bang, there you go. So I was like, okay. Then this was picked up by Rob Faulkner on LinkedIn. Similar things. Basically was kind of going, what is he talking about? He's got this massive platform and he's basically giving the wrong advice to people to do that, and just highlighting that actually insurers and comparison websites have very sophisticated technology platforms that will spot that you are doing this, and they will start to black mark you or take your cover away or start to ask questions because of the way you're trying to manipulate the data, going back in a form, putting in more data, different data, and trying to do all that kind of thing. And then this obviously caused a massive response on LinkedIn. Most of them agreeing, asking why the FSA were not regulating these types of broadcasts, because essentially he's given advice to people. One person I did pick up on, which I thought was interesting, which is James York, and he always says some sensible stuff. But basically it comes down to, the industry has done an appalling job at communicating its own worth and value in the product.
Right.
And that's what it comes down to. And we can kind of whinge all we want. There's two things. We can whinge all we want, but we've got to look at ourselves in this. You can't just, we are part of the game on this one. The other thing is, it does kind of just play into the narrative that we talk about, that insurers are just trying to not pay out and all this type of stuff, which we know working in the industry isn't true. So yeah, just interesting.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's a good point. It's all coming out there, and I think it's right to say that he should not be set. He doesn't have a license to kind of do this sort of thing. I suppose the caveat is that the insurance industry is way too complicated, asks too many questions. It's policies, and it's the way that you even on these sites, you don't know why you're being asked a lot of these questions, and I think there's been a movement for a long time to say, can we not streamline and simplify? But the industry carries on with this, and I'm looking at this at the moment. It carries on with a sort of, well, I'm the underwriter, so I'm going to ask some extra questions, and it adds more and more and more criteria to something which is essentially quite simple in terms of what it's supposed to do. It's a risk. You don't know whether that risk is going to pay out or not pay out, and adding 25 further questions doesn't really help. So in a way, the door was open to people like Lewis to say, hey, look, the way their algorithms work is you can kind of mess around with them and get a different result, which might be in your favor. So it's absolutely right. But fun, you come back to everything here and say, look, we need to simplify these products because we don't need to ask so many questions about them. We need to just know where people live, what they do roughly, and that they can pay the policy and the premium, and they've not made stuff up about the thing that's being covered. And that's it. But actually, we do overcomplicate it. So that's something we've got to communicate, and the communication of the value of insurance, as you say, that it's not just about price and you're not going to get ripped off on the claim, is really, really important. Now we're not doing that. We haven't done that as an industry. We do it very poorly everywhere. And I think some of that is to do with this internal kind of thing. The value chain only works, and then it kind of leaves the customer off the end of it and doesn't involve them in this discussion. So I've always said, I think we need the customer in the discussion and the conversation when we're developing the product. Yeah. Because that will change everything about this. But at the moment, most of these discussions are between underwriters and brokers, underwriters say, oh, here's a great set of wordings for a new product. And the brokers say, we can never sell that. So, they end up with some, excuse my French, bugger's model of a policy, and yeah, that's bad for the customer, but also in this context of this discussion, it opens up the door to fraud. It opens up the door to crappy data when you're entering it at the front end.
Yeah. So that was just some I spotted on LinkedIn. You can find that thread. I'll probably put the thread in the comments after the show as well, and you can have a flick through. But they're quite interesting, and there are many hundreds of responses to that. Okay, let's do this, Ben.
News from the regions.
It's turning into my favorite. Yeah, massive news from the regions, Ben. Huge celebrity status.
It's huge. Yeah, it's huge. So we were in Ireland, Northern Ireland, with Bieber last week, and I was presenting, and we were in a hotel in a place called Hollywood in Belfast. Hollywood spelled Holy Wood, Holywood maybe, but it's pronounced Hollywood, I think. Anyway, people from Belfast can let us know whether that's true or not. And there was Hollywood in the hotel.
There was.
The Bieber, this is Graham Trudgill, who's the CEO of Bieber, who I was presenting with, and we were doing a tour of the region session. And here he is with one of the latest recruits to the insurance industry through the talent spotting scheme, Amber Heard. And diversity. It ticks every box. Amber Heard of Hollywood, Holly Wood, was there. Graham got this great pick with her, and she's taking up a position as a claims adjuster at Aviva.
That's brilliant.
She's not actually. She's just finished filming. Which film?
The Dubliners. I don't know what.
No, which one was she in before?
I don't know.
Oh, you don't know. You're not up in your Amber Heard facts, are you? Aquaman 2. Aquaman 2.
I haven't seen the first one. Was it any good?
No, I didn't see the first one either. I just knew it because I had to look it up because it was Amber Heard, and I didn't even recognise it was Amber Heard.
To tell you the truth, I wouldn't.
But there was much excitement, and she was apparently very lovely. Obviously, she's had all the publicity around the court case that she had with the man who was played drunk in Pirates of the Caribbean, and all that stuff. And anyway, so but apparently I didn't speak to her, but Graham said she was really lovely, one of the nicest people he's met.
They both look delighted.
I mean, it's hard to overstate how excited Graham was having got this photo.
It's brilliant.
The whole of the event, everything we were doing, the strategy of Bieber, everything, and all the other stuff that we were talking about, the future of the insurance industry, just went on the back burner for a 10-minute period there while Amber was in the room.
Brilliant. A bit of glitz and glamour. Can't go wrong, really.
Absolutely. Great. A-list.
Good. Excellent. Right. I've got a fast-paced moving video for you, Ben, because I know you love them. Here we go.
Good.
Yeah, so we launched Tintec London Market this week. which is great. We're looking forward to another good session. We got
good. I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, we'll preview it properly, obviously closer to the event. But yeah, we've got some really good speakers. Actually, got some exciting news to announce next week, but I'll hold back on that. But yeah, nice bunch of people.
Amber Heard.
I haven't got Amber Heard yet. Hold that thought.
Oh, holding that thought, yeah.
But the invite's out. Whether she accepts, who knows? I got to give Graham a call. He might be able to pull a few strings.
Graham's in there.
Yeah, he's in. But yeah, stuff that we talk about. So delivering change, all the stuff around the London market, how technology is going to enable this stuff, and what it means for the future. So yeah, as I say, we'll look at that properly closer to the date. But, that looks good. I'll put a link on in the chat as well to the agenda. So if anyone's interested, they can take a look at that as well. So I think that's it, isn't it, Ben?
Yeah, I think that's it. We're done.
We're done. That's enough. We got plenty to talk about next week. Right. What are you doing this weekend? Any good?
I think I'm getting into the climbing, so I'm doing a bit of climbing, and unfortunately I'm a bit busy at the moment. I've got to do a bit of work at some point. But other than that, no, just a quietish weekend. I think it's good. We got some people around for dinner, which will be nice tomorrow, and then it's Remembrance on Sunday. So I'll be. Yes, well, that's all very controversial now, isn't it? Of course.
God, yeah, very controversial. Yeah, really, really interesting. We haven't even got time to go into that, but I'll talk about that.
Great.
Yeah. Well, if you want to listen to really interesting commentary, the news agents do a really good dissection of the article. But anyway, as I say, we digress. So we'll be back next week. Thanks ever so much for tuning in. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Bye. Have a great weekend.